Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something that'll completely change how you think about Vikings. Forget the swords, forget the helmets with horns that never actually existed. We're talking about wool. Yeah, you heard that right. Wool. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. A single Viking longship sail was worth more than every weapon on board combined, and making one could take 3 full years of backbreaking work. You're probably thinking, it's just a sail. How hard could it be? Well, spoiler alert. You'd probably quit after week 1. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing where in the world you're listening to these stories. Maybe you're in Tokyo at 2 a.m., or perhaps you're in Chicago winding down after dinner. Let me know. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in a Norse longhouse in the year 875 AD. The fire's crackling, smoke's curling up through the roof hole, and there's a woman at a massive wooden loom that takes up literally half the building. Her name's Astrid. Her hands are covered in calluses that have calluses, and she's been working on the same project every single day for the past 34 months. This isn't a tapestry for decoration. This isn't clothing. This is a sail, roughly 90 square meters of tightly woven wool that will carry her husband's longship across the North Atlantic. And if she messes up even one section, 30 men could drown. Here's what blows my mind. While Viking men were out there getting all the historical credit for exploration and conquest, Viking women were engineering textile technology so advanced that modern scientists still can't fully replicate it. We're talking about fabric that could withstand hurricane-force winds, resist salt water degradation, and remain flexible in sub-zero temperatures. Try doing that with your cotton t-shirt. The economic reality was insane. A good longship sail could cost the equivalent of 8 milk cows, which, in Viking Age economics, was roughly the same as a decent-sized farm. Some of the fancier sails, the ones with intricate patterns and premium dyes, could run you the price of a small settlement. And here's the kicker, these sails wore out. A heavily used raiding ship might need a new sail every 5 to 7 years. That's not a one-time investment. That's a recurring expense that could bankrupt families. Historians are still debating exactly how many sails were in production across Scandinavia at any given time, but the textile industry was absolutely massive. Every coastal village, every farming settlement, every little outpost had women working looms. The Viking Age wasn't just powered by warriors and shipbuilders. It was powered by an army of weavers whose names we'll never know. You look at Astrid's hands again. The fingers are bent permanently from years of pulling thread tension. There's a scar across her palm from where the heddle rod slipped last winter. Her back has a permanent curve from leaning into the loom, and she's only 32 years old. This work ages you in ways that swinging a sword never could. But here's the thing that gets me. She's not being forced to do this. This is skilled labor, respected labor. In Norse society, the ability to weave a seaworthy sail was as prestigious as being a master blacksmith or a legendary shipwright. Women who could produce top-quality sailcloth were sought after, well compensated, and held genuine economic power in their communities. Some of them became wealthy enough to fund their own trading expeditions. The sail Astrid's making right now will travel farther than most Vikings ever will. It'll see Iceland, maybe Greenland, possibly even the coast of North America. It'll survive storms that would terrify modern sailors. And through it all, it'll carry the mark of her craftsmanship, a specific weave pattern that experienced sailors can identify from a distance, like a signature written in wool and wind. So yeah, tonight we're spending 3 years making a Viking sail. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll never look at historical textiles the same way again. You wake up before dawn on a cold April morning in the Icelandic highlands, and your first thought is, I need to find 60 perfect sheep. Not just any sheep, You need animals with wool that's going to survive being beaten by Atlantic gales for the next decade. Because here's what nobody tells you about Viking sales. The whole thing starts with sheep genetics, and if you pick the wrong flock, you're basically weaving a death sentence. The sheep you're looking for aren't like modern breeds. These are Norse short-tailed sheep, and they look like they were designed by someone who had never actually seen a sheep before. They're small, they're scrappy, and they produce a double-coated fleece that's basically nature's miracle fabric. The outer layer is long, coarse, and water-resistant. The inner layer is soft, crimpy, and provides insulation. When you spin these two layers together in the right ratio, you get thread that's stronger than anything else available in medieval Europe. You're walking through morning mist with an old shepherd named Bjorn, who's probably forgotten more about sheep than you'll ever learn. He stops at a ewe and runs his hand through her fleece without even looking at her face. "No," he mutters. "Too much inner coat. Thread'll be weak." You think she looks fine, but what do you know? Bjorn's been doing this for 40 years, and his sales are still going strong on ships that have crossed to Vinland and back. Here's a wild detail that researchers only figured out recently. Vikings were selectively breeding sheep specifically for sail-making qualities. They weren't just raising animals for meat and general wool. They were running a specialized breeding program that prioritized fiber length, crimp pattern, and weather resistance. We're talking about animal husbandry techniques that wouldn't become common in the rest of Europe for another 300 years. Bjorn points to a ram grazing on a slope. That one. His daughters produce the best outer coat I've seen in 5 seasons. You nod like you understand, but honestly, it just looks like a slightly annoyed sheep to you. The ram notices you staring and makes a sound that's somewhere between a cough and a threat. You make a mental note not to turn your back on him. The selection process takes all day. You're checking fleece quality, examining hoof health, because unhealthy sheep produce inferior wool, and assessing diet patterns. Sheep that graze on coastal grasses produce different wool than sheep that eat highland vegetation. The mineral content in the soil affects fiber strength. Even the amount of sunlight exposure changes the texture. It's like being a sommelier, except instead of wine, you're obsessing over sheep hair. By afternoon, you've identified your core breeding stock. 60 ewes, 12 rams, and you're already planning next year's lambing season because, surprise, you need multiple years of fleece production for a single sale. One sheep produces maybe 4 pounds of usable wool per shearing. Your sale needs roughly 220 pounds of finished thread. Do the math, and you're looking at multiple flocks, multiple seasons, and a level of resource management that would make modern supply chain managers weep. Here's where it gets really interesting. Different parts of the sale require different wool types. The edges need the most durable fiber because they take the most stress. The center can use slightly softer wool because it's supported by the surrounding fabric. The reinforced corners, the parts that attach to the mast and the yards, those need triple-ply thread made from only the coarsest outer coat fibers. So you're not just raising one flock, you're managing multiple flocks with different genetic profiles for different sale components. Historians still debate whether individual farms could produce enough wool for their own sales, or if there was a regional trade network. The evidence suggests both. Wealthy families maintained large flocks and could supply their own ships. Smaller households participated in cooperative wool sharing arrangements, kind of like a medieval textile co-op. Either way, the economic infrastructure required was massive. You're sitting with Bjorn as the sun sets, watching the flocks settle for the night. He's explaining that in 2 months you'll be shearing these animals, and the timing has to be perfect. Too early, and the wool hasn't reached full length. Too late, and they start shedding naturally, which weakens the fibers. There's maybe a 10-day window where conditions are optimal, and if it rains during that window, you're postponing and risking lower quality. My grandmother could tell the perfect shearing day by watching how the birds nested. Bjorn says, packing his pipe. I just check the sheep's skin temperature and pray to the gods I'm not wrong. You ask him what happens if he is wrong. He looks at you with the patience of someone explaining gravity to a child. Then someone drowns, he says, and their family remembers your name for all the wrong reasons. The weight of it settles on you as the stars come out. Every choice you make from this point forward, every sheep selected, every shearing date, every processing decision, it all connects directly to whether sailors live or die 3 years from now. No pressure, right? It's early June now, and you're about to learn that Vikings had a very different definition of fun spring activity than you do. You're standing in a stone-walled enclosure with 12 other people, all of you eyeing a flock of sheep that are eyeing you right back, with what can only be described as preemptive judgment. One of the rams, you're pretty sure it's the same one from 2 months ago, is pawing the ground like he's about to charge. Spoiler, he is. Shearing day in the Viking Age wasn't the peaceful pastoral scene you see in children's books. There were no electric clippers, no mechanical restraints, no veterinary sedatives. Just you, a pair of iron shears that weigh about 3 pounds, and a sheep that absolutely does not want to cooperate. And these Norse sheep, they're not the docile, overbred fluff balls of modern farms. These are semi-feral animals that have spent the winter fighting off foxes and climbing cliffs. They're basically wool-covered gladiators. You grab your first ewe. Well, grab is generous. You chase her around the pen for 5 minutes, finally corner her against a wall, and manage to get your arms around her middle. She immediately starts thrashing like you've personally offended her ancestors. Someone yells helpful advice that you can't hear over the bleating. Your boots are slipping in mud that you're trying very hard not to think about the composition of. Here's what the history books don't tell you. Sheep shearing is a full contact sport. You're wrestling a 150-pound animal that's all muscle and panic. Your goal is to flip her onto her haunches so she's sitting upright between your legs, which is the traditional Norse shearing position. Her goal is to kick you in the face. It's like the world's worst dance, and you're both terrible at it. Finally, you get her positioned. Your thighs are clamping her in place, your left hand is controlling her head, and your right hand is reaching for the shears. These aren't scissors. They're more like giant spring-loaded tweezers made of iron, and they require constant hand pressure to keep closed. By the end of the day, your forearm is going to feel like you've been squeezing a stress ball for 8 hours straight. You make your first cut, and immediately you understand why this takes skill. Cut too close to the skin, and you wound the animal. Cut too far from the skin, and you leave behind usable wool, which is basically throwing money away. The shears are heavy, your hand is already cramping, and the sheep is making a sound like she's filing a formal complaint with the universe. The experienced shearers around you are making it look easy, which is infuriating. Old Bjorn is on his 3rd sheep already, moving the shears in smooth, rhythmic strokes that peel the fleece off in one continuous piece. You're hacking away like you're trying to trim a hedge in the dark. Your fleece is coming off in chunks. This is supposed to be premium sail-making wool, and you're producing what looks like the aftermath of a very aggressive haircut. Here's a detail that modern textile historians find fascinating. Vikings didn't shear their sheep the same way every year. In years, when they were preparing for long voyages, they'd do a technique called ruing, where you pluck the wool by hand during the natural shedding period. It's slower and more labor-intensive, but it produces longer fibers because you're pulling from the root rather than cutting mid-shaft. Longer fibers mean stronger thread. Stronger thread means sails that don't rip when you're 3 days from land in a storm. But ruing requires perfect timing. You have to catch the sheep right when the winter coat is loosening, but before it starts falling out on its own. Miss that window, and you're left with whatever you can salvage. Some scholars argue that this timing knowledge was so valuable that it was passed down as closely guarded family secrets. Others think it was common knowledge that just required experience to master. Honestly, historians are still arguing about it. You're 2 hours in, and you've finished exactly 1 sheep. Your back is screaming. Your hands are bleeding from half a dozen small cuts where the shears slipped. The you just released is standing 20 feet away, looking remarkably naked and extremely judgmental. You have 59 more to go. The woman working next to you, her name's Greta, and she's probably done this 500 times, leans over during a break. "First shearing season?" she asks, not unkindly. You nod, too tired to be embarrassed. She hands you a strip of cloth to wrap around your blistered palm. "My first year, I cried," she says. "Third sheep in, just sat down and sobbed. My mother said it happens to everyone. You'll get faster." You want to believe her, but right now, you're calculating how many days this is going to take. 60 sheep, at your current pace of 1 every 2 hours, accounting for breaks and the fact that your hands might actually fall off. You're looking at weeks of this. Weeks of wrestling livestock, weeks of cramping hands, weeks of being covered in lanolin and regret. But here's the thing. Every shearer around you went through this exact same learning curve. Every sail currently crossing the Atlantic started with someone's bloody, blistered first shearing season. The legendary sails that carried Eric the Red to Greenland? Some teenager probably cried while making them too. You take a breath, wrap your hands, and grab sheep number 2. She looks at you like she knows exactly how this is going to go. She's probably right. 2 weeks later, you're standing next to what can only be described as the worst-smelling vat you've ever encountered in your life. It's a wooden barrel filled with liquid that's somewhere between amber and questionable brown, and the smell is making your eyes water. Welcome to the wool washing stage, where you're about to discover that Viking textile processing involved more bodily fluids than you ever wanted to think about. Specifically, fermented human urine. Yes, you read that right. Urine. And not fresh urine either. That would be too simple. This is urine that's been sitting in a covered barrel for 2 weeks, fermenting in the sun, developing ammonia compounds that would make a modern chemist nod in grudging respect. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about raw wool. It's absolutely disgusting. It's coated in lanolin, which is a waxy substance sheep produce to waterproof their fleece. It's also filled with dirt, vegetation, sheep dung, and various other substances you'd rather not catalog. You need to get all of that out while preserving the fiber integrity, and medieval Scandinavia didn't have industrial detergents. What they did have was chemistry knowledge that was honestly pretty brilliant. Urine breaks down into ammonia, which is a powerful degreasing agent. It cuts through lanolin without damaging the wool fibers the way harsh lye soap would. It's disgusting, it's effective, and it's why every Viking household had a designated urine collection barrel. Here's where it gets even weirder. Not all urine was considered equal. There's actual historical evidence that certain diets produced better cleaning results. People who drank a lot of ale supposedly produced superior fermentation. There are references to households trading or even purchasing urine from specific individuals known for their quality. Imagine that being your reputation in the village. "Oh, Olaf. Yeah, he makes excellent stale pea. Top-tier stuff." You're holding your breath as you lower the first batch of fleece into the barrel. The woman supervising you, her name's Ingrid, and she's apparently been doing this for 30 years, is watching with the critical eye of someone who knows exactly how badly you can mess this up. "Don't scrub it," she warns. "You're not beating dirt out of a cloak. You're coaxing the lanolin away from the fiber. Gentle pressure, constant movement." You begin working the wool through the liquid, and it's possibly the least pleasant tactile experience of your life. The fleece is slippery, the ammonia fumes are burning your nostrils, and your hands are going to smell like this for days no matter how many times you wash them. But slowly, incredibly, you can see it working. The water is turning darker as the lanolin and dirt separate out. The wool is beginning to look lighter, fluffier. The process takes hours. You're working in shifts with other women from the household, everyone taking turns at the vat because the fumes are legitimately intense. After the first urine wash, you rinse the wool in clean water, which you had to haul from the stream this morning because medieval plumbing wasn't a thing. Then you do a second urine wash, then another rinse. For particularly dirty fleeces, you might do 3 or 4 cycles. Historians debate whether Viking Age Norse had a complete understanding of the chemistry involved or if this was purely experiential knowledge. Did they know about ammonia compounds and pH levels? Probably not in those terms, but they absolutely understood cause and effect. They knew which fermentation times produced the best results. They knew that temperature affected cleaning power. They knew that over-processing could damage fibers, while under-processing left the wool too oily to spin properly. Here's a detail that blows my mind. Some high-status households would do a final rinse in a mixture of water and wine or ale. Not because it cleaned better, the urine had already done the heavy lifting, but because it left the wool smelling less terrible. Imagine being wealthy enough that you could afford to wash sheep fleece in beer. That's Viking luxury right there. You're 4 hours into washing duty when you start to understand something that hadn't clicked before. This isn't just labor. This is quality control. Every imperfection you miss now, every bit of vegetable matter you don't remove, every section where the lanolin isn't fully cleared, that's going to cause problems down the line. Dirty wool doesn't spin evenly. Uneven thread creates weak points in the weave. Weak points become tears. Tears become shipwrecks. Ingrid is examining a section of fleece you've just pulled from the rinse water. She holds it up to the light, squints, pulls a tiny piece of straw from between the fibers. Better, she says, which is apparently high praise. Last year, the Jarl's wife's household rushed this stage. Their sail ripped during a raiding expedition to Francia. 3 men went overboard. She drops the fleece into the clean basket. Take your time. Dead sailors don't care that you are efficient. The sun is setting by the time you've finished processing today's batch. Your back aches from leaning over the vat. Your hands are wrinkled like you've spent the day swimming, and they reek of ammonia despite multiple washings. You've got roughly 50 more pounds of raw fleece waiting for tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. But as you're hanging the cleaned wool to dry on wooden racks in the afternoon breeze, you notice something. It's beautiful. The fibers are soft, clean, almost glowing in the golden hour light. This used to be dirty, matted, disgusting sheep hair. Now it's the beginning of something that will carry people across oceans. You created that transformation with your own hands and a barrel of fermented pea. Vikings had weird jobs, man, but they got results. 3 months have passed, and now you're sitting in a circle with 11 other women around the longhouse fire. It's early evening, the daylight is fading, and everyone's hands are moving in the same hypnotic rhythm, drafting wool fibers onto spindles that twist and drop, in a motion so continuous it's almost meditative. Almost. Except for the part where your fingers feel like they're going to fall off. This is the spinning circle, and it's going to be your life for the next 1.5 years. Every evening, after the day's other work is done, you gather here. You'll spin thread until your eyes can't focus anymore, and then you'll spin a little longer. Because here's the math that's haunting you. A single longship sail requires roughly 200,000 meters of finished thread. A skilled spinner can produce maybe 60 meters per day. You do the calculation, and suddenly 18 months seems optimistic. The youngest woman in the circle is named Ragnar, and she's maybe 14 years old. Her hands move so fast they're almost blurring, the spindle dancing at the end of her thread like it's alive. You've been watching her technique, trying to imitate it, but your attempts look clumsy by comparison. She notices you staring and gives you a smile that's somehow both encouraging and slightly pitying. You'll get faster, she says, which is what everyone keeps telling you, and you're starting to wonder if it's actually true. Here's what nobody warns you about. Spinning isn't just repetitive, it's destructive. You're pulling fibers with the same pinching motion thousands of times per day, using the same pressure points on your thumb and forefinger. The lanolin that's still in the wool, you can't remove all of it during washing, and you don't want to because it adds water resistance that seeps into every crack in your skin. Over time, it actually changes the shape of your hands. Ingrid, who's been spinning for 40 years, holds up her hands during a break. Her fingers curve inward permanently, the joints swollen from decades of this exact motion. Spinner's hands, she says matter-of-factly. Every woman over 30 has them. You learn to do other tasks differently. Threading needles becomes interesting. Gripping a knife requires adjustment. She flexes her fingers, and you can hear the joints crack. But my thread is the strongest in 3 villages, so there's that. The thread you're making isn't uniform. It can't be. Different parts of the sail need different thread weights. The edges and reinforcement points get thick, tightly twisted 2-ply or even 3-ply thread. The main body of the sail uses medium-weight singles. The very finest thread, almost delicate, is reserved for certain decorative elements on high-status sails. So you're not just learning one spinning technique. You're learning a whole range of them, and your hands need to remember which tension creates which result. Here's where the real skill comes in. You're blending the 2 types of wool fibers, the long, coarse outer coat and the soft, crimpy undercoat, in ratios that vary depending on the thread's purpose. Too much outer coat, and the thread is strong but inflexible and hard to weave. Too much undercoat, and it's soft but weak. The perfect blend gives you strength, flexibility, and weather resistance all at once. And you're doing this by feel, adjusting ratios on the fly as you draft fibers onto your spindle. Researchers today still can't quite figure out how Viking Age spinners achieved such consistency without any measuring tools. There's this theory that experienced spinners developed almost unconscious calibration. Their fingers could literally feel the difference between a thread that was 40% undercoat versus 45% undercoat. Some textile archaeologists have tried to replicate Viking thread using traditional methods, and they report that after about 6 months of daily spinning, they started to develop this tactile sensitivity. Your hands become measuring instruments. The conversation around the spinning circle tonight is a mix of gossip, news, and teaching. Old Bergthora is telling a story about a weaving disaster 3 valleys over. Someone used poorly spun thread, and the entire sail had to be scrapped after it failed inspection. 2 years of work, Bergthora says, her spindle never pausing. Just burned it. Couldn't even reuse the wool. The shame followed that family for a generation. Ragnar asks a question about twist direction. Whether clockwise or counterclockwise makes a difference. This launches a 20-minute discussion where it becomes clear that historians are still debating this exact question. Some evidence suggests Vikings used a Z-twist for warp threads and an S-twist for weft. Other evidence contradicts this completely. The women in your circle all have opinions, and none of them fully agree. My grandmother said clockwise for strength, one woman offers. Mine said it didn't matter as long as you were consistent, another counters. You're 3 hours into tonight's session, and your right shoulder is beginning to ache from the repetitive motion. The fire's burning lower, casting long shadows on the walls. Someone starts humming a working song, one of those old tunes that matches the rhythm of the spindle drop. Others join in. The sound is haunting, almost trance-like, and you realize this is probably what spinning circles have sounded like for hundreds of years. Your thread isn't perfect. There are thick spots, thin spots, places where your tension wavered, but it's getting better. Last week, Ingrid examined your work and only pointed out 12 flaws per meter. Tonight, she's only finding 8. Progress is incremental, measured in tiny improvements that accumulate over months. As the circle breaks up for the night, you look at what you've produced. Maybe 45 meters of usable thread. Tomorrow, you'll make another 45 meters, and the day after that, and the day after that, for the next year and a half, until your fingers develop their own permanent curve, until you can spin in near darkness by feel alone, until the motion becomes as natural as breathing. Ragnar catches you looking at your hands. Don't worry, she says softly. The cramping stops hurting after the first few months. Then it just becomes normal. You're not sure if that's comforting or terrifying. Probably both. It's late summer now, and you're scrambling up a rocky hillside that's way steeper than you'd like, reaching for lichen that's clinging to a boulder about 2 feet above your comfort zone. Your basket is already half full of plants that range from probably safe to might make you hallucinate if you're not careful. And you're starting to understand why Viking Age dye making had a surprisingly high casualty rate. Because here's what nobody mentions when they talk about those beautiful colored sails you see in museum paintings. Getting those colors meant foraging for plants that could absolutely kill you if you picked the wrong one. And you're doing this without field guides, without botanical training, without even a clear understanding of what scientific classification means. You've got oral tradition, visual memory, and the knowledge that if you poison yourself, the village will remember you as that idiot who ate the bad lichen. The woman who's teaching you this, her name's Thyra, and she's got a reputation as the best dye maker in the region, is perched on a rock face like it's the most natural thing in the world. She's in her 50s, missing 2 fingers on her left hand from an accident you haven't asked about, and she's currently pointing at a cluster of orange lichen. That one, Xanthoria parietina, makes a beautiful yellow, and it won't kill you, which is always a bonus. She pauses. The one next to it that looks almost identical, that'll give you stomach cramps for 3 days. Notice the difference? You squint at the 2 patches of lichen. They look exactly the same to you. Thyra sighs the sigh of someone who's had this conversation before. The safe one has slightly more orange undertones, and it smells different if you crush it. Here, she scrapes off a tiny sample and hands it to you. You smell it, trying to memorize a scent that's vaguely mushroomy with notes of stone and regret. The dyeing process for Viking sails was insanely complex because you weren't just making colors for decoration. You were making functional markers that could save lives. A sail needed to be visible in fog, recognizable from a distance, and the colors needed to remain stable after months of sun, salt, and storm exposure. Fashion was secondary. Survival was primary. Red dyes came from madder root, which you spent 3 days last week digging up from the banks of a stream. Your hands are still stained pink. The roots have to be at least 3 years old to produce good color, so you're basically playing botanical detective, examining root thickness and trying to remember which plants you noticed growing when you were here 3 summers ago. Get it wrong, and you waste days of processing time on roots that produce weak, muddy colors. Blue was even more complicated. The best blue came from woad, which required an entire fermentation process that was part chemistry experiment, part religious ritual, and part hope this doesn't explode. You had to harvest the leaves at the right stage of growth, crush them, form them into balls, dry them, re-wet them, and then ferment them in a vat with stale urine. Yes, urine again, and sometimes ashes from specific types of wood. The smell was legendary. There's a reason woad dyers in medieval towns were legally required to work downwind of residential areas. Here's a detail that fascinates textile historians. Vikings achieved color-fast dyes without modern mordants or chemical stabilizers. They used alum, which they mined from specific clay deposits. They used iron-rich water from certain bogs. They used tannins from oak bark, and they combined these in ratios that had to be taught person to person because writing down the instructions wasn't really an option when your society's literacy rate was basically runes for special occasions. Thyra is now showing you a plant that looks completely innocent, just a nice little flower growing in the shade. Touch this one, she says, and you'll have blisters for a week. But if you process it correctly, wear gloves and don't breathe the fumes, it makes a green that lasts for years. She wraps a piece of cloth around her hand before carefully digging around the roots. Lost an apprentice once. Girl didn't believe me about the gloves. Spent 3 days with her hands wrapped in poultices, crying. She learned. You're realizing that dye making required a level of botanical knowledge that rivals modern pharmacology. These women weren't just gathering pretty plants. They were managing a complex system of chemical reactions, seasonal timing, and risk assessment. Some scholars argue that Norse women were essentially chemists working without laboratories. Others point out that this knowledge was probably less formalized than we think, more experiential and intuitive. The basket is getting heavy now. You've got lichen for yellows, madder root for reds, some bark samples for browns, and a few experimental plants that Thyra wants to test. Never stop experimenting, she tells you as you climb down from the rocks. Last year, I found a moss that makes a gray, so perfect it looks like storm clouds. Took me 6 tries to figure out the mordant ratio, but now Jarls are requesting it specifically. Back at the Longhouse, you're going to spend the next 3 weeks processing these materials. Boiling, straining, testing, adjusting. You'll dye test strips of yarn and hang them in the sun to check for fading. You'll soak them in salt water to test for color stability. You'll adjust your recipes based on results, keeping mental notes because written instructions still aren't really a thing. And here's the kicker. All of this work, all of this risk and expertise is for a sail that might only use colored thread for decorative borders or clan markings. The majority of Viking sails were probably undyed or just lightly colored, but those decorative elements mattered. They identified your ship from a distance. They marked your family's status. They turned a piece of fabric into a statement. Thyra is examining your basket's contents, nodding approval at most of your selections. Good choices. You're learning to see like a dyer, looking at plants and seeing colors instead of just greenery. She pulls out one sample you'd grabbed. Except this one, this is just a weed. Makes a terrible dye and attracts mice. She tosses it aside. But honestly, including one mistake in a basket of 20 plants, that's pretty good for someone who's only been doing this for a season. You look at your stained hands, think about the blisters you'll probably develop despite your best efforts, and wonder if maybe just making a plain sail would have been simpler. But then you imagine your family's ship appearing out of the fog, the yellow and red markings visible from miles away, announcing to everyone watching, "We are here, we are skilled, and we didn't die making this." Yeah, it's worth it. It's mid-autumn now, and your family's longhouse has been completely reorganized around a structure that's basically holding your entire life hostage. The loom is up, and when I say up, I mean this thing is massive. Roughly 12 feet tall, 8 feet wide, and taking up so much space that you've had to move the sleeping benches, relocate the food storage, and accept that normal family meals are no longer happening at a proper table. You're standing in front of it right now, looking up at the weighted warp threads hanging down like a textile waterfall. And you're having a mild crisis about the fact that this wooden monster is going to dominate your existence for the next year minimum. Your younger brother tried to walk past it this morning and got tangled in the warp threads. It took 15 minutes to extract him without damaging anything. He's now banned from the western half of the house. This is a warp-weighted loom, and it's the standard Viking Age weaving technology. Here's how it works. Vertical threads, the warp, hang from a top beam and are held taut by clay or stone weights at the bottom. Horizontal threads, the weft, get woven through using a combination of heddle rods that separate the warp into 2 layers. It's ingenious, it's effective, and it requires roughly the same amount of household space as a small horse. Setting up the loom took 3 days and the help of 5 people. First, you had to mount the top beam securely to the longhouse frame. If this thing falls, it destroys months of work and possibly injures someone. Then came the agonizing process of measuring and attaching each warp thread. For a sail this size, you're looking at around 800 individual warp threads, each one carefully measured to the same length, each one tied to its own weight. The weights themselves are a whole situation. You can't just use random rocks. They need to be uniform in weight or the tension becomes uneven, which creates weak spots in the weave. So someone in your household spent the last 2 months making clay weights, firing them in a kiln, and testing them to make sure they're balanced. You've got approximately 200 of these things, each weighing about 2 pounds, hanging from the bottom of your loom like the world's most inconvenient wind chimes. Here's what's driving you slightly insane. You can't leave the loom unattended. Temperature changes affect thread tension. Humidity makes the wool expand. A draft through the longhouse can tangle threads. You've essentially got a living textile installation that requires constant monitoring. Someone once compared it to babysitting, except the baby weighs 400 pounds, and if you mess up, sailors die. Ingrid is here to supervise your first actual weaving session, and she's being very patient about the fact that you're terrified to touch anything. The loom won't bite, she says, which is easy for her to say because her hands aren't shaking. You've spun the thread, you've set the warp, the hard part is done. Now you're just… well, no, actually, this is also a hard part, but you'll get used to it. The weaving motion looks simple when she demonstrates. Lift the heddle rod to separate the warp threads, pass the weft through with a shuttle, beat the new thread into place with a weaving sword, lower the heddle rod, repeat on the other side. Her movements are smooth, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. When you try it, the shuttle catches on a warp thread. The tension feels wrong, and you're pretty sure you just created a gap that's going to haunt you forever. That's fine, Ingrid says, examining your work. You'll cut that section out and reweave it tonight. Your face must show your devastation because she actually laughs. Did you think your first attempt would be perfect? I spent my entire first month cutting out mistakes. My mother said I produced more scrap than usable fabric. You learn by failing, and then you learn to fail less. Here's something that archaeological evidence has revealed. Viking looms weren't just utilitarian. Many of them were decorated. Carved beams, painted designs, even runic inscriptions asking for good fortune or divine assistance. Your loom has a simple pattern carved along the top beam, done by your grandfather 40 years ago. There's a rune sequence that translates roughly to, "May this work bring honor." No pressure. The physical toll of weaving is different than spinning, but equally brutal. You're standing for hours, reaching up to manipulate the heddle rods, bending down to adjust weights, constantly moving side to side. Your shoulders are going to develop muscles in places you didn't know muscles existed. Your lower back is going to lodge a formal complaint with your brain around week 3. And the noise. Nobody warned you about the noise. The weights clack against each other every time you beat the weft into place. The heddle rod creaks when you lift it. The weaving sword makes a rhythmic thump that echoes through the longhouse. It's not loud exactly, but it's constant. Your family is going to fall asleep to the sound of weaving and wake up to the sound of weaving for the next year. Historians debate how many hours per day Viking women spent at the loom. Some evidence suggests they worked in shifts, a few hours in the morning, a few in the evening, with other tasks in between. Other evidence points to marathon sessions during winter months when outside work was impossible. What's clear is that weaving a sail was a household-altering commitment. Everything else got scheduled around loom time. You're 2 hours into your first real weaving day, and you've completed maybe 6 inches of fabric. The sail needs to be roughly 30 feet long. Your brain is trying very hard not to do that math right now, because the resulting number is going to make you want to cry. Instead, you focus on the next pass, the next beat, the next row. Your mother brings you water and some dried fish, which you eat standing at the loom because sitting down means stopping, and stopping means thinking about how far you have to go. She stands there for a moment, watching you work. Your grandmother wove 3 sails in her lifetime, she says quietly. Each one carried your grandfather safely across the sea and back. He always said he trusted her weaving more than he trusted the ship's hull. That's the weight of it, isn't it? This isn't decorative tapestry. This isn't clothing that can be mended if it fails. This is life and death engineering disguised as domestic craft. Every thread you weave is a promise that you're making to sailors you might never meet, on voyages that haven't happened yet. You adjust your grip on the weaving sword and start the next row. The loom creaks, the weights clack. Your family's daily life continues awkwardly around this massive wooden structure that's currently running your world. Welcome to the next 12 months. It's December now, and you're beginning to understand why Viking women had a reputation for being able to weave in conditions that would make modern textile workers quit immediately. Because here's your current situation. It's 4 in the afternoon, the sun set 2 hours ago, and you're working by firelight that's so dim you can barely see the threads in front of your face. Welcome to winter weaving, where barely visible is considered adequate working conditions. The longhouse fire is burning as bright as you can manage without smoking everyone out. But the light doesn't reach the loom properly. You've got oil lamps positioned at strategic points. One hanging from a beam to your left, one sitting on a shelf to your right, both of them producing that flickering yellow glow that's just enough to make shadows dance, but not enough to actually illuminate anything properly. You're essentially weaving by feel and memory, trusting your hands to know what your eyes can't clearly see. Here's what's absolutely wild. Experienced weavers can do this. Thyra came by last week and spent an hour at your loom in near total darkness, her hands moving with absolute confidence, the weave coming out perfectly even. When you asked how she could possibly see what she was doing, she looked at you like you'd asked a strange question. "I'm not seeing," she said. "I'm feeling." The thread tension tells you if the warp is aligned. The resistance of the weaving sword tells you if the beat is even. Your fingers learn to read the fabric. You're trying to develop this skill, and it's going about as well as you'd expect. You've already made 3 mistakes today that you only discovered when you brought a lamp closer for inspection. Each mistake means cutting out and reweaving that section, which means you're actually going backward. At this rate, you'll finish the sale sometime around the year 900, which is definitely not the plan. The winter months are supposed to be prime weaving time. Outside work is minimal. The household is mostly confined indoors anyway, and there's not much else to do during the long, dark hours. But working in low light conditions has its own challenges. Eye strain becomes a real problem. You're getting headaches that start behind your eyes and radiate out like someone's tightening a band around your skull. Ingrid says this is normal. She also says it doesn't really get better, you just get used to it. Here's a detail that modern researchers find fascinating. Analysis of Viking Age textiles shows remarkably consistent weave quality throughout entire pieces, including sections that would have definitely been woven in darkness. This suggests that Norse women developed tactile sensitivity, so refined they could literally feel imperfections in the weave pattern. Some experimental archaeologists have tried to replicate this skill, and they report it takes months of daily practice before your fingers become sensitive enough. You're learning to work by touch. The spacing between warp threads has a rhythm. Your fingers can feel when they're too close or too far apart. The tension of the weft has a specific resistance when it's correct. Too tight and it puckers the fabric. Too loose and it creates gaps. The sound of the weaving sword beating the thread into place has a particular note when everything is aligned properly. You're essentially turning weaving into a multi-sensory experience. The fire crackles, sending sparks up toward the smoke hole, and for a moment the light shifts and you can actually see the fabric you're creating. It's beautiful, honestly. The weave is tight and even. Well, mostly even, except for that section from this morning that you're pretending doesn't exist right now. The thread has a slight sheen from the lanolin, and you can see how the different wool types are blending to create both strength and flexibility. Then the fire settles. The light dims again, and you're back to working blind. Your hands move through the familiar pattern, separate the warp with the heddle rod, pass the shuttle through, beat the weft into place, switch sides, repeat. The motion is becoming automatic, which is both good and slightly unsettling. Good because it means you're developing muscle memory. Unsettling because you're starting to dream about weaving, which seems like a sign that you're spending too much time at the loom. Except you can't spend less time at the loom because the sail needs to be finished, so basically you're stuck in a textile nightmare of your own making. Historians still debate whether winter weaving was actually more efficient despite the lighting challenges. Some argue that the confined indoor lifestyle meant women could spend more continuous hours at the loom without interruptions from farming or other seasonal work. Others point out that eye strain and shorter working days would have reduced productivity. The evidence is mixed, which basically means everyone's guessing and calling it scholarship. Your younger sister comes to sit near the loom, bringing her own handwork. She's tablet weaving a narrow band for trim. She doesn't need much light for her work. Her fingers have learned the pattern so well she could probably do it in complete darkness. You watch her hands moving in the firelight, the tablets turning in sequence, creating a complex pattern that emerges like magic from the threads. Does it get easier? You ask her. The dark, I mean. Does your vision adjust? She's quiet for a moment, her tablets clicking softly. Not really, she finally says. But your expectations adjust. You stop trying to see everything and start trusting your hands. Mother says grandmother could weave an entire section in complete darkness if she had to. Used to tell stories while her hands worked, never even looked at the loom. You try to imagine having that level of skill and honestly can't. Right now, you're squinting at every row, second-guessing every movement, constantly worried that you're creating catastrophic errors you won't discover until tomorrow morning. But you keep going, because that's what you do. The shuttle passes through. The sword beats the thread into place. The weights clack softly against each other. Outside, wind is howling around the longhouse, carrying snow that's probably drifting against the walls. In here, it's warm and dim and filled with the sounds of domestic work. The loom creaking, the fire crackling, your sister's tablets clicking their rhythmic pattern. This is how sails get made in the Viking Age. Slowly, in the dark, by women whose names won't be remembered, but whose work will carry ships across unknown oceans. You squint at the next row, feel for the thread tension, and keep weaving. Your eyes are tired. Your back aches, and you've got maybe 4 more hours of work ahead of you tonight. But when morning comes and you examine today's progress in proper daylight, you'll know whether all this fumbling in the dark was worth it. Probably. Hopefully. You'll find out tomorrow. It's early spring now, and you're having what can only be described as a mathematical crisis. You're standing at the loom with Ingrid, and she's explaining, for the 3rd time, why the sail pattern you've been weaving for the past 4 months has to follow specific geometric principles that were figured out through centuries of trial, error, and apparently a lot of drowning. Because Viking sails weren't just big rectangles of fabric, they were engineered structures where every thread placement mattered. Here's what's making your brain hurt. The sail has to be woven in a way that distributes stress evenly across the entire surface. Wind doesn't hit a sail uniformly. There are high-pressure zones, low-pressure zones, and points where forces concentrate in ways that will absolutely rip fabric apart if you're not careful. Your ancestors figured this out not through physics equations, but through observation and catastrophic failure. They knew that certain weave patterns held up better in storms. They just didn't know why in the way we'd explain it today. The warp and weft threads need to be arranged so that the fabric has some diagonal give but remains stable along the main axis. Too much rigidity and the sail can't adjust to changing wind conditions. It'll catch a strong gust and either rip or pull the mast down. Too much flexibility and it loses shape, flaps uselessly, and again, probably tears. You're aiming for a sweet spot that has to be achieved through thread count, tension, and weave pattern. Ingrid is using a marked stick to check your thread spacing. Every 3 inches, she's counting the warp threads, making sure they're evenly distributed. 18 threads per handspan here, she mutters. 17 here. That's close enough, but watch your tension on the next section. Uneven thread distribution creates weak lines where the fabric will want to tear. Here's where it gets really complicated. The edges of the sail need to be reinforced because they take the most stress. So you're not just weaving one consistent pattern across the whole surface. You're changing the weave structure as you go. The borders get a denser weave, sometimes even a different weave pattern entirely. The corners where the sail attaches to the rigging, those get triple reinforced sections that are basically fabric within fabric. You're working on one of these corner reinforcements right now, and it requires adding supplementary weft threads in a pattern that looks insane but apparently works. You're doubling back every third row, creating a denser structure that can handle the massive stress of the entire sail's weight pulling against the attachment points. Get this wrong, and the corner rips out during the first voyage. Get it right, and this sail might last a decade. Historians and textile engineers have studied surviving Viking Age sail fragments, and yes, a few tiny pieces have been found in ship burials and archaeological contexts. And they're genuinely impressed by the sophistication of the weave structures. These weren't simple tabby weaves. There's evidence of complex patterns, intentional density variations, and reinforcement techniques that show a deep understanding of material stress and structural integrity. But here's the thing that drives modern researchers crazy. There are no written instructions. None. This knowledge was passed down through demonstration and practice. An experienced weaver would show you the pattern, watch you try it, correct your mistakes, and eventually you'd internalize the technique. Which means that if a particular skill didn't get passed on, if a master weaver died before teaching someone, or if a family line ended, that knowledge was just gone. You're learning one specific reinforcement pattern right now that Ingrid learned from her mother, who learned it from her grandmother, who supposedly learned it from a master weaver who'd studied with a legendary craftswoman from the Hebrides. Or maybe Norway. The story's kind of fuzzy, but the technique works, and that's what matters. The geometric precision required is genuinely impressive. You have to maintain the same thread count across sections that are being woven at different tensions. You have to transition smoothly between the main body of the sail and the reinforced borders without creating a visible line where structural weakness can develop. You have to account for the fact that the fabric will contract slightly when you cut it off the loom and the tension releases. There's this whole section near the top of the sail, the part that will be closest to the yardarm, where the weave has to be specially modified to handle the unique stress pattern of the rigging attachment. Ingrid draws it out for you using charcoal on a piece of wood, showing how the forces will distribute. It looks like a spider web of arrows pointing in different directions, and somewhere in your brain, medieval Norse women figured all of this out without ever seeing a force diagram. How did they know, you ask, staring at the diagram? How did the first weavers figure out these patterns? Ingrid is quiet for a moment, considering. They didn't, not all at once. They wove sails, and sometimes those sails failed, and they looked at how they failed and adjusted the next one. A sail tears along the edge. Next time, reinforce the edges more. A corner rips out, strengthen the corners. Over generations, the patterns that worked survived. The ones that didn't, well, those are at the bottom of the ocean along with the ships they failed. It's a sobering thought. Every technique you're learning represents someone else's disaster. Every reinforcement pattern exists because a previous sail without it tore apart, possibly killing people. You're not just following tradition, you're following a trail of failures that your ancestors learned from. The mathematical precision of it becomes almost meditative after a while. Count the threads, check the spacing, adjust the tension. The pattern emerges row by row, and you can actually feel when it's right. The fabric has a certain hand, a specific texture and resistance, when the thread distribution is correct. Too loose, and it feels floppy. Too tight, and it's stiff. Just right, and it has this quality that's hard to describe, but unmistakable once you know what you're feeling for. You work through the afternoon, the spring sunlight finally strong enough that you can actually see what you're doing without straining. The geometric pattern is growing beneath your hands, this invisible architecture of thread placement and tension that will either hold or fail when the wind hits it months from now. Ingrid checks your work one more time before leaving for the day. She runs her hands over the section you've just completed. feeling for inconsistencies. Good, she says finally. You're starting to understand. The sail doesn't care about looking pretty. It cares about surviving. Keep that in mind, and you'll do fine. You look at the vast expanse of fabric still waiting to be woven, and the complex patterns still to be learned. The mathematics of survival, written in wool and geometry, passed down through generations of women who turned disaster into knowledge and knowledge into craft. Yeah, no pressure at all. 6 months later, you're standing over a pot that smells like something died, was brought back to life, and then died again. Congratulations, you've reached the waterproofing stage, where you're about to learn that making a sail seaworthy involves coating it in a mixture so disgusting that you'll be tasting it in your nightmares for weeks. The base recipe is fairly straightforward, in the way that just climb that cliff is straightforward. You need fish oil, specifically oil rendered from cod livers that have been sitting in barrels for long enough to achieve peak rancidity. You need pine tar, which you've been collecting by burning pine roots in a covered pit and harvesting the thick black resin that drips out. And you need rendered animal fat, preferably from seals if you can get it, sheep if you can't. Mix these together in the right proportions, heat them to the right temperature, and you get a waterproofing compound that's been keeping Viking sails functional for centuries. Here's what nobody mentions. The smell is apocalyptic. It's not just bad, it's the kind of smell that makes your eyes water, your stomach flip, and your neighbors ask pointed questions about what exactly you think you're doing over there. You're stirring this bubbling cauldron of fish oil and tar, and the fumes are so intense that you've had to set up outside, downwind of literally everything, and even the dogs won't come near you. Thyra is supervising because apparently this process can go catastrophically wrong if you don't know what you're doing. Too hot and it burns, which ruins the waterproofing properties, she explains, prodding the mixture with a long stick. Too cool and it doesn't penetrate the fabric properly. You want it just hot enough that it's liquid but not smoking? See the surface shimmer? That's perfect temperature. You see something shimmering, but you're not entirely sure it's not just your vision going weird from the fumes. You've been breathing this for an hour, and you're starting to feel slightly dissociated from reality, which Thyra says is normal. First time waterproofing, everyone gets a little lightheaded, she says cheerfully. You'll adjust, or you'll pass out, and we'll drag you upwind and continue without you. Either way, the work gets done. The actual application process requires multiple people and a level of coordination that feels more military operation than textile finishing. The sail, which you finally cut down from the loom last week after 14 months of weaving, is spread out on a clean, flat area. 4 people hold the edges taut. You and Thyra are working with wide brushes made from bundled horsehair, applying the hot waterproofing mixture in long, even strokes. Here's the critical part. You have to saturate the fabric completely without over-applying. Too little waterproofing, and the sail will soak up water during the first rain, becoming heavy and ineffective. Too much, and the fabric becomes stiff, loses flexibility, and might crack in cold weather. You're aiming for that perfect middle ground where the mixture penetrates every fiber but doesn't pool or drip excessively. The science behind this is actually pretty sophisticated, even if the Vikings didn't understand it in modern chemical terms. The fish oil penetrates the wool fibers and creates a flexible, water-resistant coating. The pine tar adds structural integrity and UV protection. Yes, UV protection because constant sun exposure degrades fabric. The animal fat helps bind everything together and adds cold weather flexibility. It's a 3-component system that works together in ways that medieval Norse people discovered empirically. Researchers have tried to recreate Viking waterproofing compounds, and it's trickier than it looks. The ratios matter enormously. Too much tar, and the sail becomes brittle. Too much fish oil, and it never fully sets, remaining sticky and attracting every piece of dirt, debris, and seagull that comes within range. Getting the balance right requires experience, and there's evidence that different regions had slightly different recipes based on available materials and local sailing conditions. You're working on the second pass now. The first coat has partially dried, and you're applying a lighter second layer to fill in any spots that look undersaturated. Your arms are aching from the repetitive brushing motion, and you're covered in specks of the mixture despite your best efforts. It's in your hair, it's on your face. You're pretty sure you accidentally got some in your mouth at one point, and the taste is something you're going to be trying to forget for the rest of your life. Ingrid stops by to check on progress, takes one look at the operation, and immediately starts laughing. "You look exactly like I did on my first waterproofing day," she says, completely horrified and covered in fish oil. "By your third sail, you won't even notice the smell. You cannot imagine a universe where you don't notice this smell. It has transcended smell and become a physical presence. You're breathing it, wearing it, probably going to be dreaming about it. Your family has already informed you that you're sleeping in the storage shed tonight because there's no way they're letting you back in the longhouse smelling like this. Here's a historical detail that's somehow both impressive and disturbing. Viking Age people could identify different waterproofing recipes by smell. Experienced sailors could tell you which region a sail came from based on the specific combination of oils and tars used. It was like wine tasting, except infinitely worse and involving rancid fish products. The waterproofing process takes 3 full days. First application, drying period. Second application, another drying period. Inspection, touch-ups on any thin spots, final drying. During this time, the sail has to be protected from rain, ironic considering you're waterproofing it, and kept away from open flames because this mixture is enthusiastically flammable. By day 3, you've achieved a state of desensitization where the smell barely registers anymore, which Thyra says is a good sign. The sail is starting to look different. The fabric has a slight sheen now, and when you touch it, there's a waxy resistance that wasn't there before. It's transforming from a piece of cloth into a functional piece of maritime equipment. Thyra does the final inspection, running her hands over every section, feeling for dry spots or oversaturated areas. She finds 3 places that need touch-ups, which she says is actually pretty good for a first attempt. "I've seen sails that needed to be completely redone," she mentions while fixing the spots. Total waterproofing failure because someone got impatient with the temperature or rushed the drying time. That's 2 years of weaving wasted, plus the cost of materials. The family involved never lived it down. You watch her work, noting her technique for future reference. Because yes, you're already thinking about future sails, which is either admirable dedication or Stockholm Syndrome. Probably both. The sun is setting as you finish the final touch-ups. The sail is laid out, glistening slightly in the golden light, smelling absolutely terrible but looking genuinely impressive. 3 years of work, from selecting sheep to this moment. And you're finally at the stage where this massive piece of fabric might actually function as intended. Tomorrow, after one more day of drying, you'll fold it carefully and begin the equally nerve-wracking process of getting it to the ship. But tonight, you're standing here covered in fish oil and pine tar, breathing fumes that could probably be classified as a weapon, and feeling something that might actually be pride. You made this? It's disgusting, it's beautiful, and it might just keep 30 people alive at sea. It's early morning, 2 weeks later, and you're standing in the village common area, watching the most terrifying moment of the past 3 years unfold. Solveig, the master weaver, the woman whose approval means everything, the person who's rejected sails from families twice as experienced as yours, is currently walking around your finished sail with an expression that reveals absolutely nothing. Your stomach is doing acrobatics. Your hands are sweating. You've been working toward this moment for 3 years, and in the next 10 minutes, Solveig is going to tell you whether all of that effort was worth anything, or if you've just produced an extremely expensive piece of garbage that will get people killed. Here's what makes this even more stressful. Solveig doesn't just check for basic competence. She's looking for flaws that won't show up until the sail is under real storm conditions. She's predicting failure points that might not manifest for months. She has this reputation, probably exaggerated but maybe not, of being able to run her hand over a section of fabric and know that it'll tear in a specific wind condition. People call her Solveig the Merciless, and not in a fun, joking way. She's been circling your sail for 5 minutes now, not saying a word. Occasionally she stops, crouches down, examines a section more closely. Once she pulls out a small knife and your heart actually stops. Makes a tiny test cut along the edge to check the weave integrity. The cut doesn't spread, which is good, you think. You're honestly not sure anymore because your brain has entered panic mode. The village has gathered to watch because apparently a public humiliation needs an audience. Or maybe because sail inspections are actually important community events. These sails carry people's sons, husbands, brothers. Everyone has a stake in making sure the textiles heading out to sea are seaworthy. Either way, there are about 30 people standing around watching Solveig examine your work, and the silence is becoming physically painful. Here's what you know about Solveig. She's rejected 12 sails in the past 5 years, 12 families who did everything right, or thought they did, only to have their work declared insufficient. Some of those rejections were for minor issues, fixable with a few weeks of additional work. Others were total failures that had to be scrapped entirely. The worst rejection happened 2 years ago when Solveig found a systemic tension problem that would have caused the sail to warp under load. That family lost 2 years of work and went into debt replacing it. Solveig moves to the corner reinforcements, the sections you spent 3 weeks perfecting, the areas where Ingrid made you redo the weave pattern 4 times. She's feeling the thread density, checking how the reinforcement integrates with the main body of the sail. Her face is still completely neutral. You're going to die. You're going to die right here from stress, and they're going to have to weave a funeral shroud for you, and hopefully someone else checks that weave because you clearly can't be trusted. Who did the waterproofing? Solveig asks suddenly, and your brain momentarily blanks because she's actually speaking. I did, you manage to say. Thyra supervised. Solveig nods slightly, running her hand over a waterproofed section. Temperature control. Maintained shimmer without smoking, you reply, reciting Thyra's instructions like they're a religious text. 2 coats, 48-hour dry time between applications. Another nod. Solveig moves to the center of the sail, examining the main weave pattern. She's pulling gently on the fabric in different directions, testing the diagonal give versus the vertical stability. You watch the fabric stretch slightly under her hands and pray to every god you can think of that it's stretching the right amount. Here's something historians have pieced together from various sources. This inspection process wasn't just about quality control. It was about legal liability. If a sail failed at sea and people died, the weaver could be held responsible. Not criminally exactly, but socially and economically. Your family's reputation, your ability to trade, your standing in the community, all of that could be destroyed if your sail killed people. Having a master weaver certify your work was basically insurance against that outcome. Solveig has moved to the edges now, the reinforced borders that took months to weave properly. She's examining the transition zone where the denser edge weave meets the main body. This is a critical failure point. If the transition isn't smooth, stress concentrates along that line and the edge can rip away from the rest of the sail. You watch her fingers trace along the border and you're genuinely not breathing anymore. The thread count varies here, Solveig says, pointing to a section near the bottom edge. Your heart sinks. Why? Your mind races. There was a reason for that variation. You remember now. The lower edge takes less wind stress but more salt spray, you explain, hoping you sound confident and not terrified. Ingrid suggested slightly looser weave for drainage while maintaining the reinforced border structure. Solveig looks at you for the first time during this inspection. Her expression is still unreadable. Ingrid suggested, or you decided. This feels like a trap. Ingrid suggested the principle. I calculated the specific thread count reduction based on the overall fabric weight and intended use pattern. There's a pause that lasts approximately 17 years. Then Solveig does something you've never seen her do during an inspection. She smiles. It's not a big smile, more like the corner of her mouth moves slightly upward. But on Solveig's face, it's practically a celebration. Good, she says. You're thinking about the sail as a system, not just following patterns blindly. That's how you become a real weaver. The relief that floods through you is so intense you actually feel dizzy. But she's not done. She pulls out a marking stick and points to 3 spots on the sail. These sections here, here, and here. The weft tension is inconsistent. Not enough to fail, but enough that I can feel it. On your next sail, monitor your tension more carefully during evening weaving sessions. You're getting fatigued, and it shows in the work. You nod, committing this to memory. She's right. Those sections were probably from late-night weaving when your arms were tired. The waterproofing is excellent, she continues. Even application, good penetration, no oversaturation. The corner reinforcements are properly executed. The edge transitions are well engineered. She runs her hand over the sail one more time. This is solid work, not perfect, but solid. It'll keep your crew safe. The crowd that's been watching erupts in approving murmurs. Your mother is crying, which you didn't expect. Ingrid is nodding with clear satisfaction. Thyra gives you a thumbs up from the back of the crowd. Solveig marks your sail with her personal stamp, a carved wooden block that she presses into a bit of wet clay and then affixes to the corner of the sail with a leather tag. It's her certification, her reputation now tied to yours. If this sail fails, it reflects on both of you. One more thing, Solveig says as she's packing up her tools. The inconsistent weft tension, that's fixable with experience. The fact that you understood the drainage principle and applied it intelligently, that's not teachable. You have good instincts. Trust them more. She walks away, moving on to her next inspection, leaving you standing there with a certified sail and the realization that you actually did it. 3 years of sheep breeding, shearing, washing, spinning, dyeing, weaving, and waterproofing, and you produced something that Solveig the Merciless deemed worthy of the sea. Your younger brother runs up, hugs you despite the fact that you still smell vaguely of fish oil. Does this mean we eat this winter? He asks. You laugh, maybe a little hysterically. Yeah, you tell him. Yeah, we eat this winter. 2 days later, you're standing on the deck of a longship, and you're about to find out if 3 years of your life was worth it, or if you're about to experience the most public failure imaginable. The sail is currently folded and secured to the yard, that massive horizontal beam that's been hoisted halfway up the mast, and there are 40 people holding ropes, waiting for the signal to raise it fully. Your heart is pounding so hard, you can feel it in your throat. Everyone from the village is here watching. The ship's captain, a grizzled man named Harold who's been sailing for 30 years, is standing next to you, and he's doing that thing where experienced sailors try to look confident, but you can see the tension in their shoulders. Because here's the reality. The first raising of a new sail is the moment where hidden flaws reveal themselves, usually in spectacular fashion. Ready? Harold asks, and you nod because what else are you going to do? Say, actually, can we wait another 3 years while I redo everything? You've committed. The sail is certified. It's time. Harold gives the signal. 40 people start hauling on the lines in coordinated rhythm, and slowly, so slowly it's agonizing. The yard begins to rise, the sail unfurling as it goes. You watch the fabric catch the light, the wool you spun and wove and waterproofed, now spreading out above the ship like a massive wing. It's beautiful. It's terrifying. You're going to throw up. The yard is halfway up the mast now, and you can see the sail taking shape. The geometry you struggled with is visible now. The way the fabric curves slightly rather than hanging flat, the reinforced corners distributing the stress exactly as they're supposed to. Wind catches the partially raised sail and it billows outward, and that's when your breath actually stops, because this is the moment. This is when weak spots tear, when poor weaving reveals itself, when structural failures happen. Nothing rips. The sail fills with wind. The fabric stretches slightly, exactly the amount it's supposed to, and holds. The corner reinforcements are taking the load without any visible stress. The edges are taut and even. It's working. It's actually working. "Keep hauling," Harold shouts, and the crew continues pulling the yard upward. The sail is 3/4 raised now, a massive expanse of fabric that's catching enough wind to make the ship strain against its mooring lines. You can hear the rigging creaking, the mast groaning slightly, and these are good sounds. The sounds of a system under load but holding together. Here's what you're watching for: any sign of thread breakage, fabric puckering, uneven stress distribution, or the dreaded edge tear that means the reinforcements failed. Modern sailors might use instruments and calculations to test sail integrity, but you're doing this the Viking way. Raise it and pray. The sail reaches full height. The yard locks into position. 40 people are still holding the lines because you haven't tested the actual sail controls yet, the sheets and braces that adjust the sail's angle and shape. The ship is pulling hard against the mooring ropes now, clearly wanting to move, and Harold is walking around, examining everything with an experienced eye that's seen 100 sails and can spot problems immediately. He stops at one of the corner attachments, checking how the rope loops are sitting against the reinforced grommets you spent 2 weeks perfecting. He pulls on the line, testing the stress point. The fabric holds. He moves to the other corner, repeats the process. Still holding. He's checking the edge tension now, running his hand along the border reinforcement, feeling for any give that shouldn't be there. "How's the weight?" He calls up to a crew member who's climbed part way up the mast to check the yard attachment. "Even distribution," comes the reply. No visible stress concentration. Harold nods, still not quite smiling, but you can see him relaxing slightly. He calls for the sail adjustments. The crew begins pulling on sheets and braces, changing the sail's angle relative to the wind. This is the real test. Static load is one thing. Dynamic adjustment is when sails usually reveal their flaws. The crew pulls the sail to port. The fabric shifts smoothly, the corner reinforcements redistributing the stress as the angle changes. No tearing sounds, no sudden slackness that would indicate thread breakage. They pull it to starboard. Same result. Smooth adjustment, stable fabric, everything holding. Here's a detail that maritime archaeologists find fascinating. Viking sails could be adjusted in ways that modern square-rigged ships can't quite replicate. The specific weave patterns and reinforcement structures allowed for more flexibility than you'd expect from a square sail. They could be partially reefed, angled for different wind conditions, even used for limited upwind sailing if you knew what you were doing. Your sail is demonstrating that flexibility right now. Harold finally allows himself a small smile. "Let's take her out." "Wait, what?" Your brain momentarily stops functioning. You thought this was just a raising test. Taking the ship out means actual sailing, actual wind stress, actual ocean conditions. Harold sees your face and actually laughs. "You think we test sails in harbor?" he asks. "We need to see how she handles real wind, real waves. Don't worry, we're not going far, just out past the harbor and back. If your sail's going to fail, better to find out now than 3 days from land." This is somehow both reassuring and absolutely not reassuring at all. The mooring ropes are released, and suddenly the ship is moving, actually moving, driven by the sail you made. The fabric is full of wind now, curved in that perfect aerodynamic shape, pulling the longship forward with a force you can feel through the deck. You're gripping the rail as the ship clears the harbor, and the wind picks up immediately. The sail fills harder, the fabric stretches a bit more, and you're watching every square inch for signs of failure. The reinforced edges are holding beautifully. The center weave is stable. The waterproofing is working. Water spray from the bow is hitting the lower edge and beating off instead of soaking in. Harold is at the steering oar, testing how the ship responds. He adjusts their angle to the wind, and the crew trims the sail accordingly. Everything is working in harmony. Wood, rope, and wool combining to create this machine that's been carrying Vikings across oceans for generations. "Try a sharp turn," Harold calls to the crew. They adjust the sail aggressively, and the ship heels over, tilts to the side, putting enormous stress on the windward edge of the sail. This is the killer test. This is where weak edges rip away from the main fabric. The edge holds. The reinforcement pattern you wove is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, distributing the concentrated force across a wider area. The ship completes the turn, levels out, and you realize you've been holding your breath for about 30 seconds. They test a few more maneuvers, different wind angles, sail adjustments, even a partial reefing where they reduce the sail area to simulate storm conditions. Everything holds. Everything works. Your sail, the thing you've been laboring over for 3 years, is performing like it's supposed to. As they turn back toward harbor, Harold makes his way over to you. "Solid work," he says simply. "I've sailed with worse sails made by weavers with twice your experience. This'll carry us to Francia and back, no problem." The ship glides back into harbor, and the crowd on shore has been watching the whole test. They're cheering now, because a successful sail raising means someone's daughter or wife or mother did her job well. It means the men using the sail have a better chance of coming home. You help the crew lower the sail, folding it carefully now that you know it works. Your hands are shaking, partly from adrenaline, partly from relief, partly from the realization that this sail you made is going to travel to places you'll never see, carrying people through dangers you can only imagine. 3 years of work, validated in 30 minutes of sailing. Worth it? Yeah, absolutely worth it. It's been 2 months since the successful sail raising, and you're at the market when you overhear a conversation that fundamentally changes how you think about your work. 2 jarls, powerful regional leaders, are arguing about sail commissions, and the numbers they're throwing around are absolutely insane. One of them just paid the equivalent of 12 milk cows for a sail with a custom-dyed pattern. 12 cows. That's not a sail. That's a floating status symbol that costs more than most people's houses. Welcome to the weird reality of Viking Age economics, where sails became less about function and more about flexing on your neighbors. Because here's what happened once sail making became established. Wealthy families stopped being satisfied with "works well and won't kill anyone." They wanted sails that announced from 3 miles away exactly how rich and important they were. The jarl who's doing the bragging, his name's Eric, and he's wearing enough silver arm rings to probably finance a small village, is describing his new sail like it's a work of art. "Red and yellow diamond pattern across the entire surface," he's saying. "Took 2 master dyers 6 months just to prepare the thread. The weaver is that woman from the Western settlement, the one who did King Harold's fleet sails. Cost me 14 cows, but when I sail into Dublin, everyone's going to know who's arriving. 14 cows. You're doing math in your head and realizing that's roughly 3 times what your entire family farm is worth. For a sail that does the exact same job as the undecorated one you made, but in a different color pattern. Here's the thing that's wild. This wasn't unusual. Archaeological evidence and saga references suggest that high-status sails could cost absolutely ridiculous amounts. Some were decorated with elaborate patterns, stripes, diamonds, even figurative scenes in some cases. Others used rare dye colors that required imported materials. Purple dyes from Mediterranean murex shells, deep blues from expensive imported indigo. These weren't just sails. They were mobile billboards advertising wealth. The competitive aspect was intense. If a neighboring jarl commissioned the impressive sail, you needed to commission something more impressive. Sale decoration became an arms race of textile extravagance, with wealthy families trying to outdo each other in increasingly elaborate designs. There are references in the sagas to sales so ornate that people could identify specific ships from the sail pattern alone, even at great distances. You're watching this conversation unfold and thinking about your own plain, functional sail. It works perfectly. Harold took it to Francia last month and came back praising its performance in a storm. But it's brown. Just brown. Undyed wool in its natural color, with maybe some slight variation from different sheep, but nothing intentional. By Jarl standards, it's basically invisible. But here's what's interesting. The economics of this luxury sail market created opportunities. The woman Eric mentioned, the master weaver from the Western settlement, she's become wealthy enough to own her own land, employ apprentices, and fund trading expeditions. She started exactly where you are now, making functional sails, and built a reputation that allows her to charge premium prices. Thyra appears next to you at the market, following your gaze to the arguing Jarls. Wondering if you should start weaving fancy sails? She asks, reading your expression perfectly. Is it worth it? You ask. All that extra work for decoration? She considers this. Depends on what you want. Decorative sails pay better, significantly better if you get good at it. But they also take longer, require expensive materials, and come with higher expectations. Mess up a functional sail and you redo some sections. Mess up a Jarl's status symbol and you might have legal problems. Here's where the textile economy gets really complex. There was a whole supply chain around luxury sails. Dye merchants importing rare materials. Thread specialists producing specific colors. Pattern designers who could plan elaborate geometric designs. Master weavers who could execute those designs flawlessly. It was an entire industry, and it was making some people genuinely wealthy. The Jarls have moved on from arguing to planning. Apparently, they're both commissioning new sails and want to make sure they're different enough that nobody accuses them of copying. You're listening to them debate whether diagonal stripes or chevron patterns are more impressive. And it's surreal. 3 years ago, you were just trying to figure out how to shear a sheep without getting kicked. Now you're overhearing conversations about textile-based status competition among the regional elite. But there's a darker side to this luxury market. It created pressure on families to overspend. There are stories, some historical, some probably exaggerated, of families going into debt to commission impressive sails they couldn't actually afford. The social pressure to have a sail that matched your supposed status could drive people into financial ruin. A Jarl with a plain sail was signaling either poverty or lack of ambition, neither of which was good for maintaining power. Historians debate how common these luxury sails actually were versus plain functional ones. Some evidence suggests that elaborately decorated sails were rare enough to be noteworthy. The sagas specifically mention them because they're unusual. Other evidence points to decoration being more common, at least among anyone with social pretensions. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Most sails were functional and plain, but there was a significant luxury market that drove innovation and economic activity. You're thinking about your next sail now, because yes, word has spread that you're competent and you've already got 2 commission requests. One is for a standard functional sail, similar to what you just made. Pays decently, relatively straightforward. The other is from a wealthy merchant who wants a sail with blue and white stripes. Pays 3 times as much, requires expensive dyes, demands perfect execution, and comes with the risk of catastrophic reputation damage if you mess it up. Thyra sees you calculating. The luxury market isn't for everyone, she says. Some weavers love it. The challenge, the artistry, the money. Others stick with functional work because it's more stable. Both are valid choices. Both are needed. Eric walks past on his way out of the market, still talking loudly about his commissioned sail. He's describing the weaver's process, how she's using imported dyes from Byzantium, how the pattern will be visible from shore when he approaches. He's already planning his arrival in various ports, choreographing his entrance to maximize the sale's impact. You watch him go and think about the weird economics of it all. Your sail, the plain brown one that works perfectly, represents 3 years of skilled labor, sophisticated engineering, and textile technology that most of the world doesn't possess. But to people like Eric, it's basically invisible. Not because it doesn't work, but because it doesn't announce anything. The woman from the Western settlement, the master weaver making 14-cow sails, she figured out that in Viking Age society, visible craftsmanship often paid better than invisible excellence. Her sails work just as well as yours, but they also serve a second function as status symbols, and people will pay extraordinary amounts for that dual purpose. So, Thyra asks, functional or fancy? What's your next project? You think about it. The safe choice is another functional sail. Build your reputation for reliability. The ambitious choice is trying the luxury market. Higher risk, higher reward. Both paths lead somewhere legitimate. Can I think about it? You ask. Thyra laughs. Of course. But decide soon. Both clients are waiting, and sail weaving season doesn't last forever. You head home, your mind churning with possibilities. 3 years ago, your biggest concern was learning to shear sheep properly. Now you're contemplating career strategy in the Viking Age luxury textile market. Life comes at you fast when you're a successful sailmaker. It's been 5 years since you started your first sail, and you're sitting at a gathering where someone's telling stories about the latest raiding expedition to England. The men are getting all the attention, talking about battles and plunder and the usual dramatic stuff. But you're sitting here knowing a secret that most people don't fully appreciate. None of those raids happen without women. Not just because women are back home managing the farms, though that's true and important, but because the entire Viking expansion, the whole legendary age of exploration that history remembers, was fundamentally powered by textile production. Those longships sailing to England, Ireland, Iceland, Greenland, even North America. Every single one was driven by sails that took years of skilled female labor to produce. Here's the economic reality that textbooks kind of gloss over. Viking society was running a massive, sophisticated textile industry that was arguably more important to their success than their shipbuilding or metalworking. While Vikings are famous for being warriors and explorers, the actual engine driving their expansion was an army of women producing sailcloth, clothing, and trade goods. Let's talk numbers for a second. A typical raiding fleet might have 30 ships. Each ship needs a sail. Each sail represents 3 years of work and requires roughly a dozen women contributing various skills: shepherding, shearing, spinning, weaving, dyeing, waterproofing. So that 30-ship fleet represents somewhere around 900 person-years of predominantly female labor. That's the hidden cost of Viking expansion that nobody talks about when they're romanticizing the longship voyages. And this wasn't just about making sails for local use. Viking Age Scandinavia was exporting woolen goods across medieval Europe. Wadmal, that tightly woven wool fabric you learned to make, was a major trade commodity. It was used for everything from clothing to ship sails to weather-resistant covers. Some regions were paying taxes in Wadmal. It was basically currency. The woman sitting next to you at this gathering is named Gudrun, and she's been weaving for 40 years. She's produced 12 sails in her lifetime, plus countless other textile goods. You know what makes me laugh? She says quietly, watching the men tell their raid stories. They're talking about how they conquered new lands, but they got there on sails I wove. They stayed warm in clothes I made. They traded with goods our hands produced, and in 100 years, the stories will all be about them. She's not bitter exactly, more resigned and amused, because she's right. The historical record focuses overwhelmingly on male activities. The sagas talk about battles and explorations, The archaeological focus is often on weapons and ships, but the textile evidence tells a different story about what actually powered Viking society. Here's something modern researchers have figured out. The scale of wool production required for Viking Age textile industry would have required massive flocks, extensive land management, and sophisticated breeding programs. We're talking about an agricultural and manufacturing system that employed thousands of women and produced goods valuable enough to trade across continents. This wasn't small-scale cottage industry. This was industrial-level production using pre-industrial technology. The trade networks were extensive. Scandinavian wool and textiles went to England, Ireland, the Frankish kingdoms, even as far as the Byzantine Empire. In return, Vikings imported luxury dyes, silver, exotic goods, and women controlled much of this trade activity. There are references to female merchants, women managing trading operations, even women funding expeditions with profits from textile sales. Ingrid is here too, and she's been listening to the conversation. My grandmother used to say that men fight with swords, but women fight with looms, she offers. The weaving halls were our battlefields, and the weapons we made carried our families across oceans. Different kind of power, but power nonetheless. Historians are still debating how much economic power Viking Age women actually held. Some evidence suggests they had significant autonomy, the ability to own property, conduct business, even divorce husbands who weren't holding up their end of household management. Other evidence is more ambiguous. What's clear is that textile production wasn't just women's work in the sense of domestic labor. It was skilled, valuable, economically critical work that created genuine wealth and influence. You think about your own trajectory. 5 years ago, you didn't know how to shear a sheep. Now you've produced 3 sales, you're training 2 apprentices, and you've got commission requests backed up for 2 years. You're not wealthy by Jarl standards, but you're financially stable. You own land, you make decisions about resource allocation, trade partnerships, and production priorities. You have power, even if it's not the sword-wielding kind that gets into the sagas. The textile industry also created social networks. Women working together on large projects, sharing knowledge, coordinating labor, managing supply chains. These networks were as important as the male warrior bands in some ways. They facilitated trade, spread innovation, and maintained the economic infrastructure that made Viking expansion possible. Here's a detail that fascinates economic historians. Some textile workshops were large enough to be almost factory-like. Multiple looms, specialized workers, apprenticeship systems, quality control standards. We're talking about organized production on a scale that wouldn't become common in Europe for several more centuries, and it was largely run by women. The men's stories are winding down now. One of them notices the women's conversation and asks what you're discussing. Just talking about wool, Gudrun says with a straight face, and the men lose interest immediately. They have no idea you're discussing the actual economic foundation of their entire society. Later, walking home, you pass by your longhouse where your current sale project is taking shape on the loom. Your apprentice is there, working on the evening's weaving quota. She's 15, talented, and asking the same questions you asked 5 years ago. You're teaching her the techniques that were taught to you, and she'll probably teach them to someone else, and the knowledge will continue passing down through generations of women whose names won't appear in the sagas. But their work will carry ships across oceans. Their skills will clothe armies. Their production will fund expeditions and establish trade routes and make the entire Viking Age possible. They're not the warriors in the stories, but they're the reason those warriors can go anywhere at all. You think about the first time you stood in front of a sheep, having no idea what you were doing, how impossible it seemed that you'd ever master this craft, and now you're part of this massive, sophisticated industry that's literally powering an age of exploration and expansion. The Vikings didn't conquer through military might alone. They conquered through wool, thread, and the patient, skilled labor of women who turned sheep hair into the sails that carried Norse culture across the known world and beyond. That's the real story, the one that history is only just beginning to understand. And you? You're part of writing it, one thread at a time. You're lying in bed now, the longhouse quiet except for the distant sound of your apprentice's loom settling for the night. The fire has burned down to embers, casting soft orange shadows that pulse gently against the wooden walls. Outside, you can hear the wind moving through the settlement, carrying with it the distant sound of the sea. The same sea that your sails have crossed, the same waters that have carried your work to places you've only heard about in stories. Your hands rest on the blanket, and even in the dim light, you can see how they've changed. The fingers that curve slightly inward now, the calluses that have become permanent landmarks on your palms, the way your thumb and forefinger have developed that distinctive weaver's shape. These hands have transformed raw fleece into ocean-crossing technology. They've created something that will outlast you, carrying your craftsmanship into futures you'll never see. Tomorrow, there will be more work. There always is. Wool to process, thread to spin, fabric to weave. Your two apprentices will arrive at dawn, full of questions and enthusiasm, and the occasional frustration that comes with learning skills that take years to master. You'll teach them the way you were taught, patiently, with corrections and encouragement, passing down knowledge that has no written form, only the memory held in experienced hands and careful demonstration. But tonight, you let yourself rest in the satisfaction of knowing what you've built. Not just sails, though those are impressive enough. You've built skills, reputation, a livelihood. You've contributed to something larger than yourself. An industry, a tradition, a way of life that connects you to women across generations and distances. The shepherdess in Iceland selecting fleece, the dyer in Norway gathering lichen, the weaver in Sweden at her loom. You're all part of the same vast, invisible network that makes the visible world of Viking exploration possible. The settlement is settling into sleep around you. You can hear the quiet sounds of families in neighboring longhouses, the crackle of dying fires, the soft movements of people preparing for rest. This community that depends on sails, on the patient work of hands that transform fiber into the fabric of exploration and survival. Your breathing is slowing now, matching the gentle rhythm of the night. In your mind's eye, you can see your sails out there somewhere on dark waters, catching wind beneath stars, carrying people safely through the vast unknown. The thought is oddly comforting, that your work continues even as you rest, that the effort of your hands extends far beyond the moment of their creation. The weight of the blanket is warm against you. Your body, tired from the day's labor, is relaxing into sleep. The familiar aches in your shoulders and back are fading as consciousness begins to drift. You're crossing that threshold between waking and dreaming, where thoughts become softer, less defined, floating like wool fibers on water, and maybe in your dreams you'll see sails on the horizon, bright against gray skies, strong against wild winds, carrying their crews safely home. Maybe you'll dream of looms and spindles and the satisfying rhythm of work well done. Or maybe you'll dream of nothing at all, just the deep, restful darkness that comes from honest exhaustion and the quiet pride of craftsmanship. The sails you've woven will catch tomorrow's wind, but tonight, rest, you've earned it. Sleep well.